So this weekend, I'm heading out to a flea market, a fair, an antique show with lots of records. I was there last year. I forgot to do a video. I didn't do a video. I did a video when I got back, but this year I'm going to do a video. Hopefully, if the weather's good, if I end up making it there, and if there are records. But we're going to go and we're going to look for some cool Genesis and Phil Collins stuff, and maybe some Brand X stuff, and maybe some Steve stuff or Peter or whatever. That's the whole fun of it. It's just the surprise. But today I want to talk about some of the things that are on my wish list. What collector's items or records do I not have in my collection? Now, we just did a video a couple of weeks ago talking about that incredible Genesis collector's book. And I've often now, or recently, I've been thinking a lot about what do I consider to be the parameters in my Genesis and Phil Collins collection. And I think the big thing is music. I really like records and tapes and a little bit of CDs, but mostly records and tapes. Tapes because they're super nostalgic to me. It's the first place I ever heard Phil and Genesis. And records because I have a living room now where I enjoy listening to records and I host my collection there. Just a quick shot for all the nerds. Here's what I'm rocking these days. There's the BBC box set, some new speakers I got, which I'm pretty excited about. And I got this new Pioneer amp, which is pretty cool. I've had that tape deck for a while, and there's some of my Genesis and Phil cassettes. There's my old tubes, some speakers I made, my turntable, and some of my old speakers. And then like this is like the bulk of my Genesis Phil stuff. I like to flip through things and look through things and listen to different versions of things, even if the bootlegs are super inferior to the official recordings or the studio recordings. I don't care. I just like that. And so my parameters are really mostly music in the sense of the formats, physical formats like vinyl, cassettes, and occasionally CDs. So with that in mind, let me share with you some of the things I don't have in my collection that I hope to find one day. Welcome back to another episode of Everything Phil Collins. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to our patrons for making these videos happen week after week. Thank you for celebrating Genesis and Phil infinitely with me. It's been so much fun doing all these episodes. And so I was laying in bed with my laptop the other night. I was on kind of like bouncing back and forth between Discogs and just different like bootleg websites that like list what bootlegs are out there and what other records are out there. And I started realizing there's a list of things that I'm looking for that I really would want to add to my collection. Either, you know, they're just kind of like those, what do you call them? Like white whales or white unicorns or black swans. I don't know. But anyway, things that I would like to own, probably because I'd like to listen to them. I think they're cool. Like everything that I own I have some sort of rational reason. Like it's like, well, I grew up with this on cassette, and so I want to own it on cassette, or you know what I mean? Those kind of things. I don't like to buy on Discogs, you know that. Although I'm actually placing a big cassette order recently, or I'm about to place a big cassette order because I want to do a video on Phil Collins tapes, and there's a couple I want to add to my collection. And honestly, as they mentioned in the Genesis Collector's book, there are so many tapes that have probably just been thrown in the garbage because tapes are like super devalued over the years. I understand, like it's completely nostalgic for me. I listened to a cassette this morning of a record that I have on vinyl and a record that I have on CD, and of course digitally. Why did I choose cassette? I don't know. I'm weird. So I'm ordering some cassettes of Discogs because I think they're going to be impossible to find. Some of them are from Indonesia, which had cassettes, I think, much longer than other parts of the world. So anyway, we're not talking about that today, but I don't like Discogs because Discogs, I think, is cheating a little bit. I like to go to these flea markets, to these record stores, record shows, record fairs, and stumble upon something. Okay, so let me tell you some of the things I'm looking for, and let me know in the comments if you have these things and describe them to me because I'm curious. So there's this record called The Story of Genesis, and I think it is Japanese, if I'm not mistaken. And it kind of looks like the Seconds Out cover. And basically, I think it's an official pressing. It has the Japanese obi strip. I believe it's a Charisma, but it's kind of like a cool greatest hits, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a record. I like owning greatest hits on vinyl, and we don't have many of them. I have a cool one from Phil Collins that has like a mix of tracks from Hello, I Must Be Going and Face Value, and perhaps Against All Odds, but I can't be sure. And of course, we have the Last Domino box set, which is kind of cool. There's something about like randomly listening to music, and it's like, oh, what song's going to come next? Like the albums, you always know what song's going to come next. So the Story of Genesis kind of intrigues me because it's an official release, I believe, and it's a double disc. And so what do we have here? I think it goes all the way up to, and then there were three. So we have like The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Dance on a Volcano, Squonk, Ripples, 11th Earl Mar, Your Own Special Way, Burning Rope, Follow You, Follow Me. So it's kind of like they go back to the beginning, The Knife, The Musical Box, Watcher of the Skies. So it's like a greatest hits. It really is a greatest hits all the way up to Follow You, Follow Me. I just think that's really cool. I would like to own that. So if you own that, let me know. That's something I've never come across. If I come across it, I'm buying it. The next record that I've been wanting to find, and if you've watched any of my hunting for records, searching for records videos, you know I've always been looking for this. It's not that difficult to find for some of you Europeans, but in North America, Canadians, it's difficult. And that's the Three Sides Live, where the fourth side is more live music, right? The fourth side has, I actually think the version I'm talking about is the digital version on Spotify. So it's not like it's impossible to listen to. That's not the point. The point is like, I do like the B-sides version, sort of. I mean, You Might Recall is insane. But yeah, so side 4 has one for the Vine, Somasis, and It, and Watcher of the Skies. So I'd like to have that. It's hard to find for me. I've never come across it. It's kind of fun because every time I come across Three Sides Live, which is often, I flip it around, see if it has that hard to find fourth side. And if it does, great. Okay, here's a record. This is a Phil Collins record that I think is easy to come across on CD, but I'm not interested in it on CD. Well, I will grab it on CD, but here's interesting. So there's this record called 12ers, right? And I believe it was, I don't know if it's the actual songs, like hit songs from No Jacket Required, or if it's the extended remixes that you can get on the 12-inch record. So I have most of the 12-inch records. Take Me Home, Sussudio. I have Don't Lose My Number. I have a 7-inch version of One More Night, but not the 12-inch version. So I don't think they're the studio versions. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're the extended remixes. It's cool. Like I have a lot of these elsewhere, but here's why this is kind of an elusive acquisition for me. Before I was like seriously collecting vinyl, there was this time where I had gotten into new vinyl. And so I was like a couple of my favorite albums of all time on vinyl, if it existed, like newer records, not like the classics. This was back before this would have been like early 2000s, back before like the current vinyl revolution. I was basically just like acquiring one or two and I put them on a shelf because at the time I didn't have a very good record player. So I was really just like putting them on the shelf, kind of the way like Taylor Swift fans do it today. Anyway, I was in a record store and they had like some new vinyl and then a couple of like garbage vinyl, like just some like old used for like $2. And I was flipping through it and I came across 12ers from Phil Collins on vinyl. And I was like, oh, I think you see that everywhere. And I think I was getting that impression because I saw it on CD a lot in used CD stores. And so I was like, oh, I always come across that. I'll get that one day. I was in no rush. Like I wasn't officially like a rabid collector of Phil Genesis stuff at the time on vinyl. Well, fast forward now, like 15 years later, and I've never seen that record again on vinyl. I'm curious if it was even an American or North American release. It may have been a Brazilian release. I've never, ever come across that record on vinyl. I think I've maybe once come across it on CD, in which case it was a little bit too expensive for my taste. I don't care too much for CDs. I will grab it if I can get it for $5-ish. But I've never seen it on vinyl. I've never seen it on cassette. I don't even think it was released on cassette. Maybe it was. But gosh, it's now like so elusive to me that and because I like saw it in my hometown, just sitting there, I was like, why didn't I grab that? And now I'm questioning whether I actually even saw it. Did I see it on vinyl? So at the time, I thought it was super, super common to find, and it is not super, super common to find. Let me know if you have 12ers on vinyl. I really want to know if you have that. And please let me know, the collectors out there, how hard it is to come across. Am I wasting my time? Another one that I think is going to be extremely hard to come across is The Way We Walk longs on vinyl. These records are not very good. I have The Way We Walk shorts, but that I had to cheat. I had to go to Discogs for that. And I apologize, but I just don't think I'll ever come across that in the wild. If I do, I'll probably grab it unless it's like $100. But I just don't think I'll come across the shorts. I don't think I'll ever, ever, ever come across the longs. They sold way less copies. It was released a couple months after the shorts. And of course, like at this point in the almost mid 90s, vinyl was like almost at its lowest level, whereas everything was CD at this point and a little bit of cassettes, or maybe even 50-50 CD and cassettes. I mean, you had to kind of like have a new CD player, which was maybe a little expensive in the early 90s. By the mid 90s, of course, everyone had them. But so CDs, you can find these a dime a dozen. Tapes, you can even find them a dime a dozen. The shorts for sure, and the longs. I have the longs on CD, no problem. I have the longs on tape, no problem. But on vinyl, it seems very elusive. And the reason I say it's kind of crappy is there is this like era where they were just cramming a bunch of music on vinyl. And it was also, I don't think it was the prominent way that people listened to Genesis and Phil Collins in the 90s. And so I don't think they put a lot of care into mastering these records. They're quite light and flimsy, and they get very distorted. In some cases, they're distorted throughout the whole record. In other cases, they get distorted a lot closer to the center. Now, I've been told, I think it might be a single disc, and I've been told that they even squeezed the drum duet, or they kept the drum duet off, but there's a couple other long songs. Anyway, apparently these are like really, really long records, which is not a great idea. I mean, you really don't want to exceed like 20, 23 minutes on a side. So I don't know much about this. I don't really care. It's just about completing the collection. So I'm looking for the longs on The Way We Walk on vinyl. I have it everywhere else, but I'm looking for it on vinyl. Another interesting record that I really love, and it was actually, as a teenager, it was a huge introduction for me into Peter Gabriel, and that's Shaking the Tree. Now, I have it on CD. I actually got it from Columbia House. So raise your hand if you remember Columbia House. And I have it on cassette. It's quite easy to find on cassette. I see it all the time. And I recently cheated, and I got a really beat up copy on Discogs on vinyl. And it's not, I think the CD version is like 18 golden hits. Do I have it here? I can never find the CD I'm looking for when I'm filming. I really should prepare for these videos. My goodness. Anyway, Shaking the Tree, like digital and CD and cassette version, has way more songs than they were able to fit on vinyl. So they cut a bunch of the songs, not a bunch, but quite a few for the vinyl version. I do have it on vinyl. I should have brought it up for this video, but I kind of want to find it the natural way. So I bought it on Discogs. My version is really beat up. The record sounds okay. But I'd like to find another version. I'd love for them to redo it, but I don't think they will, because there was another greatest hits after it, right? So I think if they were to do another greatest hits, they would probably just do a fresh greatest hits and even include like Panopticon or whatever. So I don't think they'll ever repress Shaking the Tree, but I think it's a fantastic album as a greatest hits album. Which leads me to another thing I've been looking for, which again is super hard to find, would be like Genesis Turn It On Again on cassette. So I have it on CD. I wouldn't imagine they'd do it on vinyl, although that would be nice because there hasn't been any new songs since then. So for them to do Turn It On Again on vinyl, that would be really, really cool. I don't think it was ever pressed to vinyl. If you know of a copy of the 1999 Turn It On Again Greatest Hits on vinyl, please let me know. That would be amazing. But I don't think that exists. I sure think that they should press some sort of like concise hits package that's different than The Last Domino, but they did do it on tape. And so I found a copy on Discogs. I'm pulling the trigger on that. We'll see. Going back to original vinyl, one of the things that I would really like to find, and I know some of you out there have been looking for these as well and have found them, lucky you, but I'm looking for Dance Into the Light and Both Sides on original vinyl. So they've been reissued with the new photographs back in 2016. 2015, 2016, which is great. I'm so happy to have those. I listen to them all the time. In fact, I'm looking for a second copy of Both Sides because it's one of my favorite records and one of my prized possessions on vinyl because it sounds beautiful. So I'm looking for an unopened copy of Both Sides. It won't be too hard to find. I've seen them come around here and there, and I'm just going to keep it as a backup. I do know that Both Sides and Dance Into the Light were pressed back in 94, 96, respectively. Probably very, very, very limited copies, probably not for North American or, European use. It was probably for other countries that were still doing vinyl. So I know that they're easy to find on cassette. I have them on cassette and CD, and of course I have the new issues, but it'd be really fun to come across like an original copy of Both Sides on vinyl, or an original copy of Dance Into the Light, which I think does exist. Wait, am I crazy? Does Dance Into the Light not exist on vinyl? I think somebody told me it does. So you let me know. If you have an original copy from 96, from 96 or 97? 96 on vinyl. Let me know. I'd love to know that. I'm also just looking for a copy of Brand X Masks. I haven't heard the record too much. I have Unorthodox Behavior. I tell you what, I like this one, and it relates to the story of 12ers. I did see a copy of it one time in a bookstore in a cottage country. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, is Phil on this record? And I didn't see him on the liner notes, but I think he is on that record in one way or another. And I left it. And again, I've never seen it since. So stupid. If you see something in a record store, grab it. Don't wait. But I love the artwork. For some reason, I really like the graphic design on the artwork. So I'm looking for that. Going back to those original copies of Dance in the Light on both sides, another thing I'd really like to find is We Can't Dance. So the same era, right? Early to mid 90s becomes really hard to find records on vinyl. In some cases, not so, but in the case of We Can't Dance, it's very hard. Maybe easier than Both Sides and Dance in the Light, probably because they sold more copies. But finding We Can't Dance on original vinyl, not like the newly pressed vinyl, is really difficult. And so I would like to find that. That's probably a double disc. I'm sure it doesn't sound as good as the new one, but just kind of for a completist, I would like some of the originals. Like I have the original Serious Hits on vinyl, which was really hard to find. So I did get that, and I've seen it in a record store since. And then, of course, I have the new reissue with the remaster. I don't know if I feel like it hasn't been remastered, to be honest, but whatever. We Can't Dance original on vinyl would be really cool. Another interesting thing that kind of came up on my radar, I didn't really see it at the time, is the Going Back 7-inch singles. How many of you here own the Going Back 7-inch box set? Now, I don't care about Going Back. I really don't like it. In fact, I don't even own a copy on vinyl. You know, there's been like the reissue on vinyl. If I come across it cheap, I'll get it. But for some reason, I really don't like that record. I don't know why. But anyway, there was a beautiful box set put together, 7-inch singles, and it's just a really, really well-designed package. And I mean, Phil has always done this kind of like, you know, whether it's like the paintings on the Greatest Hits CD, or it's like the kind of the skeuomorphic design that he's done on singles artwork that he did on the most recent singles artwork, the skeuomorphic envelope he did on the Love Song package. He's always kind of done this, like, make the album cover look vintage in a way. They did a great job on the Illegal Alien artwork as well. Just kind of make it look vintage. And the 7-inch collection for Going Back is super cool. And I don't think I'll ever find it at a record store. I might have to go the Discogs route or maybe buy from one of you. It's not something I probably would listen to a lot, but it looks really cool. I want to just have it on my shelf. So let me know in the comments if you have that. You got to let me know in the comments if you have any of these and give me the details. I really am very curious. And finally, the thing I want to find the most is the big picture is I'd really like to find bootlegs from the Invisible Touch era. So I have so many bootlegs there seems to be a lot of bootlegs from the Selling England by the Pound tour. I have a couple of those. There's a few from the Lamb tour. I have a couple of those. There are tons from the Seconds Out era, like Wind and Trick of the Tail combined. There are tons from the Duke era that cover a little bit of And Then There Were Three and Duke, and even into Abacab as well. I have a few bootlegs now that include Who Done It and Man on the Corner. But right up till Abacab, like, that's it. I don't have any bootlegs on vinyl, especially any bootlegs that include the Shapes album. I don't have any bootlegs that include Invisible Touch or We Can't Dance. Now, I know you're going to be like, you can download these, you can watch them on YouTube. I really like these illegal items that were made secretly in other countries. I love finding them in the wild. I love the packaging. In some cases, they're just photocopied pieces of paper. In some cases, they like have all of the track numbers and track names wrong. Somebody misspells the words. I just find that humorous and really, I love having these collectible items. They're really cool. So yes, I could get Invisible Touch bootlegs of high quality on YouTube or from the torrent sites. I get that. I've done it. I love it. I've even found some CDs in the wild, but for some reason, it's not the same. I'm really intrigued by finding like a Mama tour or Invisible Touch tour on vinyl. They are out there. They're much harder to find than some of the other eras. Now, there's a recording from, I think, the LA Forum. I believe it was like the day after Mike's dad died. And it's the King Biscuit Flower Hour, if I'm not mistaken, and it has some advertisements through it. I have a digital copy of that, which I listen to all the time. There's a great little pun after That's All, where he's like, that's all from Genesis, and join us next week. And they play like the next half of the concert. Love it, man. I love the King Biscuit Flower Hour. I want them to press that on vinyl. I know it's out there as a bootleg. It's very hard to find. It's very expensive. I think it comes in 4 discs. I think they sell them all separately or they're together. It's very, very hard to find. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I would love to own that. Would I love to pay $400 or $500 for it? No, not yet. Maybe one day. But I was told, remember we talked about that Phil Collins bootleg? I was told that like there is some sort of UK law that was passed that allows people to press FM recordings. So if there's an FM broadcast and you have a recording of it, you can press it. I don't know how that works with publishing, but I guess the master recordings is public domain. I don't know. It seems unlikely to me, but that's what I was told. And so in theory then, could you take King Biscuit Flower Hour from LA? No, maybe it was because it was broadcast in the US. That doesn't apply. I don't know. But it would be really nice if they pressed something of high quality from the Invisible Touch tour. I just think there's some great versions of Abacab, the Brazilian, That's All. I think it'd be really nice to have. So that's my list. Now, the final thing on my list is not one thing at all. And that is the most exciting part about being a record collector or a Phil Collins and Genesis collector. And that is discovering something that you didn't know existed at all. Even those Genesis or those going back 7-inch singles, I didn't really know those existed. I had missed that back in 2010 and somebody posted it online recently and I was like, I got to have that. Most of the bootlegs I've found, I wasn't aware existed. When I'm flipping through records and I'm like, what's this? It says Genesis on it. This is weird. And then I Google it and find out more about it. This happened last year at the fair that I'm going to in a couple of days. I found the Genesis Skywatchers and I was like blown away. So the greatest thing that is on my list is something that I don't even know. Like what I don't know what I don't know. And so the thing I'm most excited to find is when you're flipping through something and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a crazy Japanese version of Abacab. I have to have it. I didn't know this existed. Or this is a bootleg from a radio show. I did not know this existed. So that's been the fun for me of collecting and searching and digging, is discovering something that I didn't even know existed. And sadly, as I collect more and I learn more from you guys and from great books like the Genesis Museum's book, there'll come a day where I won't be surprised anymore. I know of everything that exists. So right now, I'm still kind of new and I'm still being surprised by different things. I'm even finding in my 12-inch collection, I'm almost finished my Genesis and Phil Collins 12-inch collection. So it's making it harder to find stuff. In most record stores I go into, and I check the Genesis or Peter or Steve or Phil, I have everything or I've seen everything before. So I'm more commonly disappointed. So the things I'm really looking forward to are the things I don't even know exist. Let me know in the comments, what should I be looking for this coming weekend? I'm going to bring you along, of course, you know that. But what should I be looking for? And what that I've listed here do you have in your collection? I want to know. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button for exclusive videos, behind-the-scenes content, and to have your say on future topics before I film. Have a look at our Patreon page. Thanks for watching.